I've received file remarks from the public as well as members of Congress. Sadly, I am just one of millions of Americans across this country who have experienced discrimination and attacks. In recent years, we've witnessed increased attacks on Asian Americans, immigrant communities, religious minorities and spaces, and that's only a fraction of violence. It is demoralizing to watch acts of such blatant racism and xenophobia all carried out with complete disregard for the humanity of others. Sadly, our government has a history of sanctioning such hatred and violence. In 1798, President John Adams signed into law a set of 4 bills collectively known as the Alien Sedition Acts. These 4 bills increased the residency requirement for American citizenship from 5 years to 14 years, authorizing the president to imprison or deport foreign nationals considered dangerous to the peace and safety of the United States and restricting speech critical of the government. These laws were designed to restrict the activities of foreign-born Americans, silence minorities, and weaken freedom of speech and the press.
The room settles into a tense silence as a historic voice is called forward to speak. This is not an ordinary policy discussion, but a moment shaped by memory, identity, and consequence. Representative Ilan Omar appears not only as a member of Congress, but as a living reflection of America's promises and contradictions. Her presence alone carries the weight of history, resilience, and controversy. Every word spoken in this moment is rooted in lived experience rather than abstract theory. This hearing places a spotlight on how laws written centuries ago still shape modern lives. It forces the audience to confront uncomfortable truths about power and fear. The testimony unfolds at the intersection of civil rights and national security. It challenges long-standing assumptions about who belongs and who is protected. There is no political theater here, only stark reminders of past mistakes. The story being told is deeply personal, yet undeniably national. It reflects struggles shared by millions across the country. As the microphone opens, the stakes become clear and immediate. This moment asks whether history has truly been learned from.
Our last witness on our first panel is Representative Ilan Omar. She represents the 5th Congressional District of Minnesota, also known as the home of Prince. Includes Minneapolis with the Twins and a big mall and surrounding suburbs. She was sworn into office in January 2019, making her the first African refugee to become a member of Congress, the first woman of color to represent the state of Minnesota, and one of the first 2 Muslim American women elected to Congress. Representative Omar, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Good morning, Chairman, Ranking Member, and distinguished members of this committee. Thank you for holding this very important hearing. I'm no stranger to discrimination, hate speech, or threats of violence against my family and myself simply because of my identity. As a Black, visibly Muslim woman who came to this country as a refugee, I have dealt with racist, xenophobic, bigoted comments and threats all my life. Even being elected to offices hasn't stopped me from being othered. I've received file remarks from the public as well as members of Congress. Sadly, I am just one of millions of Americans across this country who have experienced discrimination and attacks. In recent years, we've witnessed increased attacks on Asian Americans, immigrant communities, religious minorities and spaces, and that's only a fraction of violence. It is demoralizing to watch acts of such blatant racism and xenophobia all carried out with complete disregard for the humanity of others. Sadly, our government has a history of sanctioning such hatred and violence. In 1798, President John Adams signed into law a set of 4 bills collectively known as the Alien Sedition Acts. These 4 bills increased the residency requirement for American citizenship from 5 years to 14 years, authorizing the president to imprison or deport foreign nationals considered dangerous to the peace and safety of the United States and restricting speech critical of the government. These laws were designed to restrict the activities of foreign-born Americans, silence minorities, and weaken freedom of speech and the press. By 1801, 3 of the acts were repealed due to its unconstitutional nature or allowed to expire. However, the Alien Enemies Act remains in effect to this day, even though it is unconstitutional as the other 3. The Alien American Act allows the United States President to determine how and if all foreign nationals should be apprehended, restrained, secured, and removed in the event of a war. There are a number of troubling and scary aspects of this law. First, war is not defined in this act, allowing it to be loosely interpreted. Second, this act completely bypassed the judicial process, ignoring due process and the right of appeal. And lastly, foreign national refers to anyone who's not a US citizen, even if they might be a lawful resident in the United States. Meaning, even if you have lived in the United States legally for 20 years, built a community, started a family, for whatever reason not have gained citizenship, you would be subject to apprehension, detention, or deportation without due process. I introduced the Neighbors Not Enemies Act to repeal this unjust law. And while many might say this 18th century law is outdated and has no impact on modern history, I would like to remind you that less than 100 years ago, the United States invoked this act during World War II to detain and subsequently deport Japanese, German, and Italian immigrants. Just last week, we marked the 80th anniversary of the executive order signed by President Franklin Roosevelt, which led to mass incarceration of nearly 120,000 people of Japanese ancestry. In the years since, the United States has recognized injustices done to the Japanese American and subsequently apologized for the cruel internment. Although we promised to never walk down that dark path again, we failed to keep that promise. During the 2016 election, President Trump used the Alien Enemies Act as a justification for the Muslim ban. Administration after administration have continuously demonstrated the danger of unchecked executive power and stain it has on our countries decades and centuries later. Whether it is justifying putting hundreds of thousands of people in internment camps, attacking Muslim immigrants and refugees, or separating families at the border, the Alien Enemies Act dangerously permits the president extreme executive powers to unjustly target an entire group of foreign nationals. This outdated and xenophobic law is an offense to our nation's values. We must learn from historic mistakes based on fear of the other and embrace a system of freedom and equality by passing the Neighbors Not Enemies Act. Thank you, Chairman.
And invites the nation to listen carefully to what comes next. This testimony ultimately underscores why Congress exists as a necessary safeguard in a democratic society. It shows Congress at its best, providing a platform where history, lived experience, and law can confront each other openly. By allowing voices like Ilan Omar's to be heard, Congress affirms that representation is not symbolic but functional. The hearing reflects the role of lawmakers as guardians of constitutional values rather than silent observers. It demonstrates that legislative oversight is essential in checking the reach of executive power. Congress is shown here as a forum where injustice can be named without fear of erasure. The discussion highlights how lawmakers can confront outdated laws through debate rather than silence. It reinforces the idea that progress begins with honest examination of past mistakes. Congress emerges as the institution capable of translating pain into policy. This moment proves that democratic systems can evolve when courage is present. It reminds viewers that laws are not sacred simply because they are old. Congress has the authority and responsibility to amend what no longer serves justice. Through hearings like this, the legislative branch becomes a bridge between history and reform. It reflects the power of collective governance over unilateral decision-making. The process may be slow, but it is deliberate and accountable. This is how democracy protects minorities and preserves due process. Congress stands as the arena where fear-based policies can be challenged with reason. The hearing illustrates that debate is not weakness but strength. It shows that transparency remains one of Congress's greatest tools. And in moments like this, Congress proves why it remains central to the promise of equality under the law.